In this video, I'm going to show you how you can set up remote push notifications for your Lovable mobile application using OneSignal and Despia. It's very simple, so let's take a look at that. One thing to note is that OneSignal is discontinuing player IDs. So now you need to use external IDs that you issue to the user or device. Now, we'll go through the entire setup because it's actually even simpler now. So let's get started with this. Now, as you can see, I already have an application set up in Lovable, and it's already linked with Despia through the dynamic app source through the app start URL. So that's already set up and it's already linked with the stores. Now we need to set up the OneSignal push notification functionality. And I do have a chat application here because that is usually a common example for you needing push notifications, but it works with every use case and every application. Now, before we get started with anything, we need to create a OneSignal account and register it with our Apple developer account and with our Google developer account. So let's get started with that. First of all, let's go to OneSignal here. Let's log into our OneSignal account or create a new one. It's 100% free. And now we can go on New App Website, and now we can just add our app name in here. Now I'm going to add my organization name, and we're going to start setting it up for Apple iOS, but we'll also cover Google Android in this video. So let's start with Apple iOS, and let's configure your platform here. Now we need a P8 API key. Where do we get that? We get this on Apple Developer. So we're going to go to developer.apple.com/account. Keep in mind, you do need a paid Apple Developer account for this step. So you need to pay the $99 a year for the Apple Developer license in order to generate this key. So that's very important. Now, being in the Apple Developer account, we now have our program resources inside of here. And the second one here, certificates, IDs, and profiles, that's the one that will interest us. Because now in here, we will have the option keys. And we need to create now a P8 key. So let's click on keys here. And now we're going to generate a key. Now I'm going to click on plus here. And I'm going to create a key name. Let's call this Power Push OneSignal. And I'm going to select Apple Push Notification Services. This will be the first one. That's the only capability that it needs, but we need to go on Configure here. So let's click on the Configure button. I'm going to select Production under the environment, and then for key restrictions, I'm going to select Topic Specific. And now I'm going to add a topic here, and I'm just going to look for my app name. So my app name is Power Push. It's already published. You need to already have your bundle IDs generated. I'm going to select all of those bundle IDs now for this application. If you don't know how to get there, I will link a video down below that will walk you through the entire process in setting up your bundle IDs, getting your application on the store, and doing all of that. So let's go on Done here. And now we can just save this. There you go. And now we can click on the Continue button and on the Register button. Perfect. Now we can download this file. And now we have downloaded the file. That's everything we need. So now let's go on this key here in OneSignal and click on Select File. Now I'm going to take the file here and I'm going to drag the file into this file uploader. Now this will take a little bit. And now the file was uploaded. Perfect. Now we need the key ID for the file. So let's go back to certificates, identifiers, and profiles. And now in here, under the name, you will see the key ID, this one here. Let's copy this key ID. Let's go back to OneSignal and paste the key ID inside of here. Now we need the team ID. If we go back to certificates, identifiers, and profiles, we will see that in the top right corner next to our business name, there is this ID. We can copy this ID because this is our team ID. So let's copy this and let's paste this one inside of here. Fantastic. Now we need the last thing, that is the app bundle ID. Where do we get that? We get this from Despia. So let's go into Despia. Let's go on Publish App here. And now you see the first thing will be App Bundle ID. You will copy this bundle ID, and that's everything that you need. You will now paste this inside of here, and then we're going to go on Save and Continue, and now it's generating the application project. And now we're going to select native iOS, very important. It needs to be native iOS because it's a native iOS application. Let's go on Save and Continue. And now we will get this app ID. Let's copy the app ID. Let's go into Despia. And now under Settings, Configuration, let's look for the OneSignal configuration. So in here, you will see it says OneSignal integration. And we have the iOS application ID. You will paste the ID that we just copied inside of here, because this is for the iOS application. Now let's do the Android setup. And while we're doing the Android setup, we can already build the iOS application. Because when you change this field inside of here, you need to rebuild your application because it changes the native code. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Publish App, Apple iOS, and let's publish the application. So now while it's publishing, we can set up the Android application. So let's wait till this build starts and then we'll go with Android. There you go. Now it's building. Now in the meantime, we'll set up Android. Now for Android, we can just go on Done here for the iOS setup and we're good to go. Perfect. Now let's start with Android. Let's open our project here again. In my example, PowerPush. And now we're going to scroll down here on the left side panel and go to Settings. It's all the way down here. And now we're going to go on, in here, Push and In-App. You will click on there, and this will lead you to all the platforms here. And we're going to now select Android, Google Android, FCM, Firebase Cloud Messaging. Let's activate this one. And now we need our Google Service Account JSON and upload the file inside of here. Where do we get that? We actually do not get this from Google, we get this from Firebase. So let's go to firebase.google.com. Let's go to the console here, the top right button here saying go to console. And now we're going to create a new Firebase project. Let's create a new Firebase project. And I do have reached the limit of project that I can actually use. So you would now, theoretically, create a new Firebase project. Let's say new project. And you would click on Continue. And then it would take a little bit. And then you will see a loading screen. Now, I can't do this, so I'm going to go into an existing project. So it's almost the same process. There you go. And now we pretend that I just created a new project because I've been doing too many videos, I guess. But actually, let's do this together. I think it would be a better experience. Let's take a different account here on Firebase. Let's do this together. I want to show you how you create a project. So now you will see something like Hello Despia. Get started by setting up a new Firebase project. That works. Perfect. And then I'm going to call this Despia, or let's do OneSignal, right? Let's accept the Firebase terms and let's go on Continue, Continue again, and Continue again. You can just do Continue. Analytics location. I'm just going to select my location here and you just agree to all the terms of service, create the project, and now it is creating your project with Firebase. So let's do this together so, it's a little bit easier to understand how everything goes together. So now this will take up to 1 to 2 minutes to generate the Firebase project. It can take sometimes a little bit, but we should be fine now. It's very close towards finishing it. There you go. Very close. Just like one more load and we're done. There you go. Very, very close. Perfect. Now you can see your Firebase project is ready. So now let's click on this blue button here, Continue. And now this will open the Firebase project and their AI assistant on the side, but you can just close the AI assistant, we won't need that. Now, the important thing is we need to go into the settings of Firebase. So you see this left side panel here. In the top part, the blue part here of this left side panel, you will see this little settings icon. Click on there and then go to Project Settings. Now, in Project Settings, you have a couple of options: General, Cloud Messaging, Integrations, and much, much more. We want to go on Service Accounts. Right here, Service Accounts. It's next to Integrations and Data Privacy, Service Accounts. Click on this one here. This can take sometimes up to a minute to load when it's a new project. And now, we just keep the settings as they are, but now there will be a button if you scroll down saying Generate New Private Key. Click on this button, and then click on Generate Key. This will now download a file. There you go. And now we will go back into OneSignal. We will go into the Service Account JSON section, click on Select File here, and now we will take this file that we just downloaded from Firebase and drag it into the OneSignal file uploader. There you go. Now the file is uploading here. And now Xcode wants to open it, but yeah, let's just dismiss it. If anything else wants to open the file, just ignore that. Perfect. Okay, now we have uploaded the file. Now we can go on Save and Continue. And now we're going to select Native Android because we're building a native Android application. Let's go on Save and Continue down here. And now we get the application ID here. Let's copy the ID. Go back into Despia, and in the OneSignal integration panel, under Android Application ID, we will paste our Android Application ID. As you can see, it's the same one as the iOS Application ID, because both of those configurations are within the same project. That is completely fine. So now we can go back into OneSignal, and we can go on Done. Now, OneSignal is successfully set up for our application. So now we're good to go. This is all set up. Now we just need to rebuild our iOS and Android application so that this update is changed into the native code. As you can see, the iOS version is still building. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait till the iOS version finishes, and then we're going to make a cut and we'll be testing it on our phone. It's already done. That's amazing. Perfect. So now we're good to go. Let's just dismiss this here. Now let's go back on Publish App and also publish the Android app. So I'm going to now click on Google Android here. And then I'm going to publish the project for Google Android. We'll wait a bit till it successfully kicks off the development of this application. And then we'll be good to go. We'll wait till Apple processes the application, till we get it on test flight, and then we can start the setup. So now, as you can see, it's building the Android application as well. We'll just wait a little bit till both of them are ready and processed, and then we'll continue with the setup. So now also the Android build was successful. So for the Android build, we manually need to release it. So let's go to the Google Play console here. Let's go to Test and Release on the left side panel in the Google Play console in our application page. We're then going to click on Testing. This will open the drop down here. We'll go to Internal Testing. That's this one right here. And then we'll see this draft version here. So we'll go on Edit Release here on the button. And then this will load a little bit. And then all the way down here in the lower right corner, we're going to click on Next. We're going to wait a little bit. And then we're going to click on Save and Publish. And then we'll click on Save and Publish again. And then we're done. Perfect. Wonderful. And now this was released. So now we're good with this. And then we can go out on Testers and we can copy this link to test it on our Android device. But let's take a look at iOS here. So that was published now. Now we can, start with the process to register those external IDs now. So let's go to the documentation, lovable.despia.com, and then we'll go into native features here, OneSignal version 2. And now we have the prompt in here to now set the OneSignal external user ID of the logged in user. It's very important that this now has to happen for the logged in user, because player IDs that are provided by the OneSignal SDK that you need to relate to are depreciated. So let's copy this Lovable prompt here that we have on this page, just like this. And now I'm going to go into Lovable and I'm going to paste it. And I'm going to say following. On every app load after we got the user ID, reset/set the OneSignal user ID via the Despia function. There you go. So on every app load, every time the user opens the app, after we got the user ID, once we had enough time to load the user ID, reset or set the OneSignal user ID set via the Despia function. So this device will then be related with the ID of the user that is already logged into our database. Let's take a look at how our database is structured to understand this a little bit better. If you take a look here, I have my database here, and you can't really see it in Lovable because it's a little bit of an abstraction, but every user in here has an ID. They have their own unique user ID, right? And this user ID will be sent to OneSignal through the native Despia functionality. So instead of you getting a player ID from OneSignal, you are now sending your user ID to OneSignal. The benefit of that is that when you want to send a push notification, you only give OneSignal the user ID of the user that is already in your database, and then they will automatically send a push notification to all devices, so you don't have to any longer store all of their devices and create those relationships in your database. OneSignal handles this now for you with external IDs. So let's test this out. Let's send this to Lovable with the prompt and our explanation, and now this will be set up. Now, this can take a little bit, so I'm just going to let it sit for a moment, and then we'll look into this a little bit later. So now Lovable is in the process of installing the Despia native functionality, as you can see right inside of here, and then also already setting up the server setup for OneSignal, so we can get push notifications sent to the devices when they receive a notification from a user. Because we're building a chat app. Now it's smart enough, it will understand your application use case, and if not, you can always specify, hey, push notifications should be sent when this happens, or this happens, or this happens, right? But the setup is the important thing, so let's continue with that. So now we need to go into the OneSignal dashboard again to get the IDs. So let's click on here on the dashboard, and now on the side panel again, let's scroll all the way down and go to settings here for OneSignal. Now we're going to go under General, the setting here, into Keys and IDs. Click on Keys and IDs, and now you will get your OneSignal app ID. Copy that OneSignal app ID, and then go back into Lovable, and then you will have OneSignal app ID. You will paste this inside of here, and now we need the REST API key. Where do we get that? We will go back into OneSignal, and then we will add a new key here under the API keys setting. So let's click on Add Key. I'm going to call this Lovable. I'm going to create. We do not need to whitelist any IP addresses because Lovable is serverless. The IP will probably rotate every time it calls us. So let's create this without an IP whitelist. Let's copy the ID here, the API key. Let's go back into our app and paste it here at the REST API key field. Perfect. Now we have those both set up. Let's go on Submit. Fantastic. Now we can go back into OneSignal and just close this. Perfect. And we'll take a look what Lovable is doing. Now it will say, now I'll create the backend endpoint and integrate Despia into your app. So this will take a little bit. It's now working on the backend to set everything up, backend and frontend. So we're just going to wait a little bit and make a cut, and we'll take a look how this looks and works once we're done. So now Lovable finished it, and I already published it. So let's take a look at this. Let's open the application now. And now we'll see we have the application in here. Let's get started and let me log in, or actually create an account here. Perfect. Okay, let's go username, new user 123, email 123 at Despia.com, password hello 123 capital J, K, H, random characters. Okay. Now we're being logged in. So now our account is created. And I hope I don't have to verify my email. Okay, and we need to implement safe areas actually. Before we can test this correctly. Let's just do this real quick. It's always the safe areas you gotta add. Always the safe areas. Let's just go to the safe area prompt real quick, because right now it's rather useless for us to test this. We need to have safe areas added. So let me just paste them very quickly into Lovable here. If you don't know how to do this, it's very simple. Go into lovable.despia.com. You look for full screen safe area. You copy this Lovable prompt here that you get, and then this will automatically set up the safe area so the notch doesn't cut off the most important things. And now it's implementing this. This should take 1 to 2 minutes. Very quick to usually set this up. And then we'll take a look at this. Now, while it's doing this, there's one thing I want to take a look at, because keep in mind, I am opening the application here. The application was opened. And if you remember our prompt, we are setting the ID with OneSignal every time the application is opened. So are we doing this? Let's take a look at that. Now, if I am going into OneSignal here, we have the option to take a look at audience users. And we can take a look at the devices. As you can see, there are a couple of devices that were set up here. And there was one device that was just set up. And the first session was in here, right? So let's try reloading this to make sure that the data is all properly configured. Let me try closing and opening the application again. And we'll see, because one of them actually has an external ID. So you see how that is already linked? Yeah, that must be my device. So you can see all of them don't have external IDs yet because we opened the application before, but now we have an external ID linked. This is the ID that lives in our database, and it knows that I am in Dubai. So it, kind of creepy figuring out where I am, and it knows exactly my phone, and it knows the OneSignal ID, and it knows the external ID that we linked with it. That is the function that we called in Despia. So now we don't have to manage 1 million player IDs anymore in our database. OneSignal is now just getting our database ID related to the player as a OneSignal ID. So now when we send a push notification, we only have to send the push notification to the appropriate user that is registered, if that makes sense. So this is pretty cool now. Let's try this out actually. So let's publish this here and let's update it. And now we should be able to try this out correctly. Okay. And now that the safe areas are working, we'll be able to get this going easier, because now we can actually reach buttons. Let's take a look at this. I think the APIs on the backend should work. I didn't seem to implement the safe areas too successfully. So I'm not going to argue with the AI here. Actually, I might have to, because it's unusable. Let's tell Lovable the safe areas are not added into the top bar because it didn't add it. Sometimes when you have issues with save areas like I have unintentionally in this video, it's because it created a component for something and it applies the save area to the page, but the component is fixed and aligned to the top, and the component itself doesn't have a top padding added with the save area, so it thinks it added it, but effectively it hasn't added it. Sometimes happens because AI just looks at the code. It doesn't look how the code is, appearing on your device, how it's being translated. And sometimes it misses some important things until you point them out and then looks a little bit more carefully at a specific component and says, oh yeah, you were right. So let's double check this. Let's see. Perfect. Okay, this will take a little bit. Okay, I think this will take a little bit till it goes through all the components to fix this. So let's make a little cut here. So it did fix it. The interface is still kind of funky, but this is not a video about implementing saved areas and building beautiful interfaces, even though that would be a great topic and we need to make a video about that. It is working enough to create a conversation, even though the X should also have save area. You see how Lovable is like, oh, it's fixed, but then it forgot another component that has it in there. So sometimes you need to, say, hey, I know you think it's fixed, but it ain't. But I think we're good for now. It's functional. We can test the core functionality here. Push notifications. This user is called, I think, new user 123 or whatever this was. Let's go into my app here where I'm logged in under a different user. And let's see if I can send a push notification. Let's go in here and let's create a new chat. And now I have new user 123, right? And let's say, push me. Okay, let's send this. Okay, now I did send the notification. And as you can see, I should have received the notification here. It seems like I did receive the notification. It doesn't seem to appear in here. Maybe that's a problem in our application itself, but it also did not send the push notification. So what the heck is going on here? There may be a couple of issues going on here. Let's see if the notification refreshes inside of the application. There you go. You see now we have it push me here. So it didn't seem like it reloaded the sources. That is probably a deeper problem in our application, but something I can accept. The problem that we have is that the push notification isn't going through. That's the whole idea about this video here. So let's go into chat mode in Lovable and let's ask it why the push notification is not going through. Let's say, why did the push notification not go through? And now I'm going to say, why did the push notification not go through? Let's ask it, was the API call on the backend successful? And let's send this to Lovable now. Let's see. Now, the idea is push notifications will work. And most of the times you implement them and then they do not work. And then you're like, why don't they work? They should be working. The problem is that you need to call the OneSignal REST API correctly for it to work. So if it doesn't work, it's more than likely that the REST API, the call that the server has to execute to send a push notification to the front-end application is failing. And we then need to double check what's going on here. So now Lovable is saying following. Let me investigate the push notification issue by checking the Edge function logs to see if the API call was made and what the response was. No logs found for the send notification Edge function, which means the function either hasn't been called yet or there's an issue with how it's being invoked. Issue identified. The push notification is not being triggered because the code to actually call the notification is missing from the message sending flow. This is more than likely the issue that you will face, where if you already have logic set up in Lovable and now you're trying to add push notifications, you have added it correctly, but the code is not considering the stuff that you added newly because AI is not that advanced yet where it can really reason throughout the entire code base to understand what's going on. Because your project is probably this big And the message sending functionality is like this small. And it's very unlikely that when you add another small piece that it finds its way to this other small piece that somehow should be related to this one, right? Because you're dealing with a lot of code here. So this is why we always ask Lovable to look into specific areas to really understand where the issue is, to have it come up with a plan like it did here, so we can implement the plan. So let's click on implement the plan, and let's see what's going on with this here. Now it's thinking. This will take a little bit, so we'll take a look at the implementation once it's done. So now Lovable just finished and I already published it. Let's try this out. I got my iPhone open here. Let's look at the notifications and let's try sending a push notification. Let's go back into the chat. Let's just reload the page to make sure everything is correct here. And let's, fingers crossed that this works. Let's go to the chat. New user 123. This is a real native push sent with Despia and OneSignal. Let's send this. I am optimistic that this will work, but it doesn't seem like it yet. And this is completely fine. We'll figure out what's going on. There's still a chance that the API doesn't successfully execute. So let's take a look at this. Now, as you can see, there is no notification, no push notification appearing while the application is closed. Now, obviously, when I open the application and take a look at the chat, there you go, you will see that the message appears. But that's not enough. We want to receive the notifications when the device is closed. It didn't go through. Why it is not going through is very likely due to the fact that somewhere on the backend that sends a notification, the code is not working successfully. Let's take a look at this. Let's go back into the chat mode and let's say I tried again, but it did fail. Why? I want Lovable to look at a specific piece of my backend and then to reason and understand why it does not work. If your push notifications do not work, it's very likely due to the fact that the backend API call that sends them remotely is not working. The easiest way to check if this is actually true is by, while Lovable is thinking about this, going into OneSignal, clicking on this create button here, create the new push, select a blank one, call it test, and then do test 1, 2, 3, and then you do test 1, 2, 3, right? And then you go all the way down and you go to this button, review and send, and then you send the notification. And now, all your devices should receive this push notification. As you can see, my device did receive it. It was successful. So push notifications are working. It's just how Lovable, how our backend is calling them is failing. That's the problem. They are working, but they're not working in being called from our backend. So here's what Lovable is saying now after I ask it, take a look at this. It says, I found the issue. The edge function exists, but it hasn't been deployed. There are always issues like this when you're working with AI. You just need to be very good at looking into a specific part of your application and always reprompting Lovable or whatever AI that you're using to keep looking at this part and come up with reasons why it's not working. Now the problem in this example here is the problem looking at the logs and confirmation that no edge function logs exist. This means the send notification function has never been called or deployed. The Firebase config tomo is incomplete. It only contains the project ID, but doesn't declare the edge function. Edge functions need explicit configuration. What's happening? When you send a message, the code calls Firebase function invoke send notification. But since the function isn't deployed, it's failing silently. The error is caught and logged to console, but doesn't block the message. Okay, so now we need to set this all up. Let's implement the plan to deploy the edge functions. So it's highly likely that everything we did is correct, but the edge functions are not being deployed by Lovable because it forgot to deploy the most important part of sending push notifications, which is something that you always have to deal with when you're developing with AI. This is why I'm making the video, because you want to know those things that you have to look for because you want to implement it successfully. And sometimes you have to babysit the AI a little bit. Now, as you can see, it successfully deployed the notification function. So let's publish this application so it's all live and ready, and then we'll try this again. Hopefully it goes through this time. So let's update this, and then we'll take a look at this. Let's go back and let's reload. Now we're in our application. Let's go to user 1 to 3. Let's do I hope this works. And let's send this. Please work, please work. It still does not go through. As you can see, no notification sent. So now while it's deployed, there may be still some issues with the code that we did deploy through Lovable. Let's go back into the chat mode here, and let's say, I tried again, but no push. I don't want to give it any opinion yet on what I think is going wrong, because I think maybe it could be the external ID and that it's not providing it correctly, but I don't want to assume it yet. I want it to look for obvious issues on the backend before I'm going to direct it into a specific direction for solving this issue. Now it's reading the database logs and it's taking a look at the code that we are running here. Let's take a look at this and let's see what it comes up with. So it's still thinking. This will probably take a little bit, but we'll then get some more clarity on what's happening. Okay, let's see. Let's scroll up here. It does really seem like it's not calling the function at all, but we'll see. Based on what I can see from the backend side, right now there are no logs at all for the send notification backend function. That strongly suggests that the backend API was not called, or that call has never reached the function, rather than once the OneSignal call failed after successful being called. So, to your questions, why did this push notification not go through? Because as of now, the backend notification function doesn't appear to have been invoked. So I would highly assume this is a Lovable issue and that it did not deploy the function correctly, but we'll see. Given the current code, calls only if user ID is truthy. Okay. Then, the backend function. The likeliest cause at this point, other user ID is empty, undefined, at the time you send the message. So we skip send push notification entirely. Or Subase function invoke is throwing a network course error. That is caught in notifications TS logged only. Okay, so let's see. Add explicit logging around the notification trigger. That's good. So we'll see what's going on. This will tell us whether other user ID is set when we send this. Okay, before we implement this plan, I want to do something. Let's go to the console here and let's clear the console. Let's try sending a message. New message. Okay, there are quite some errors now, but let's see the errors that we get when we send this. Okay, let's see. Is there a network error? There seems to be a network error with the API. So what's going on here? So we're calling this API and we're getting a bad request. Let's try this again. Okay, this is going through. So that looks fine. It sends it and doesn't seem to have an issue directly. Let's try reloading the page. Okay, let's try going to the chat. Hey. Now there is error fetching conversation and all that kind of stuff. Let's send this again. And there are more errors. So now we want this to be a little bit more precise. Let's get started here. Let's log into our application. Let's create a random account here. Okay, let's sign up. And now I want to try this error here inside of Lovable. Inside of the preview for Lovable. Because now it can check the logs. Let's say check the logs. So it can check the logs to see if there's an issue specifically on the front end. Because it could be that we have a simple front end issue that's then being inherited by the back end. Now, when push notifications are not working, it's very unlikely that the native configuration is the problem. It's more likely that there is an issue on the front end that it doesn't call it at all, right? And then it seems like there's an issue with the native parts of the app. There are currently no logs at all for the send notification function. Let's tell it check front end logs, okay? Because I think it seems like the function is not being called successfully, which could be the issue. Let's see, and this would be then a problem started by the front end, inherited by the back end, and then, inherited by the app ultimately, where it just doesn't seem to work. So there are a couple of approaches how you can debug those things, and there are multiple directions that you have to take a look at. It's not just, oh, this doesn't work, it's OneSignal's issue. It's like, okay, why is OneSignal not working? Is it even being called, right? How can it work correctly if it is not being called by this other thing? And then is this other thing even being called? And if that's not being called, how can I even judge that that's the problem, right? So it is like an onion. You have to go through multiple layers to get it right, especially if you are relying on AI to generate code for you that then will be used by your application. And it says again, currently there are no front-end console logs captured related to this. That's fine. Let's try implementing the plan. Let's see what's going on. If not, we have to make the function more conservative and we have to enforce how this should work. And I think we should do this right now. Let's say to make sure you get it. It should work like this. Okay, and I'm going to just tell it first, user sends a message to user 2. User 1 sends a message to user 2. To user. To user. And then second, the API will send the message and send a push notification to the receiving user with the message. Use the OneSignal external ID as an ID for the receiving user. The external ID is our user ID of the receiving user in our user database. Of the receiving user in our user database. Let's send this into chat mode because this is how it should work, right? We are trying to send a user from the sender to the recipient, and then the recipient, its ID will be the external ID that is registered with OneSignal. And I just want to point out how this has to work on a logical level so the AI can understand how it has to work. Because it's very likely that it get it wrong. And then it doesn't call a certain part or it fails in between. At this point, we don't really know, but we're trying to get those informations by now being a little bit more specific to the AI. Now it says, perfect, I can see the implementation does follow the exact flow you described. So that's reassuring. So we know that this is not the problem. Debugging is about understanding what's not your problem, so there are less options available that could be your problem. Now, the problem is the flow architecture is architecturally correct, but it's failing silently. We need to find out where it's breaking. The most likely culprits, either user ID is undefined when we tried to send, timing issues with fetch conversation details, edge function isn't being invoked, client-side invoke failure, OneSignal doesn't have the user registered. API call didn't work. OneSignal API returns an error. Diagnostic plan. So this plan sounds good. It's trying to add console logs and server logging to this. Let's implement the plan. This will take a little bit, and then we'll take a look at this. So now it updated it. Let's publish this, which I already did. And now let's take a look at this. And I have an assumption why it is failing. Let's go to the menu here. Let's send the user a message. Let's do, oh my God. Okay, and now look at this, look at this, look at this. message sent, and then cannot send push notification, other user ID is not set. So there is a client-side issue that's preventing it from sending a notification to the user. Let's copy this entire log here from the console. If you wonder, how the heck do I get this? You two-finger click on your app, go on Inspect Elements, go to Console here, and then in the console you get a lot of beautiful documentation here on what the heck is going on with your application. So when you go in here, hey, and you send this, you will now see message sent, preparing push notification, and then those errors that are coming back. Copy those errors, go into chat mode in Lovable, and paste them inside of here. This will now tell Lovable what the heck is going wrong in this application. And its assumption was actually correct. The other user ID is empty. That is failing on the front end and preventing OneSignal from being called to send the push notification. So when push notifications don't work in your application, it doesn't have to be a Despia issue. It doesn't have to be a OneSignal issue. It doesn't even have to be a Firebase backend issue. It can very likely be that AI wrote some rubbish code on the front end that doesn't work with the implementation that you now added. It didn't properly migrate certain pieces of the code to work with your new add-on, with you adding this new feature on top of your application, and then it's all failing, right? So now we have Lovable create a plan to fix this. Now, what's the plan to fix this? The plan is, the good news is, the query is actually unnecessarily. Looking at lines 89 to 115, the code already fetches the profiles separately after determining the recipient ID. So we should just remove this broken join and keep it simple. Okay, let's do this. Let's implement the plan. Again, this will take a little bit, and then once it's done, we'll hope that this actually works. So now Lovable updated this and hopefully fixed it. I already published it, and I had to test it. And the good news is, this works. New message from 1, that's the user that sent this, and we can see the message. There you go. How cool is that? Now we can go even further on this, but I'll show you a little bit later how we can do that. Now, I do have this message now. I want to try this live with you again because it's pretty cool. This is super cool. Just ignore the other console logs here. It does work. Okay, let's send this. Perfect. Now you see this is super cool. Let me share my phone. And now you will see in a couple of seconds, we got a new push notification. This is super cool. New message from 1. This is super cool. How cool is that? Okay, and now we got push notifications working. Now everybody's asking me, hey, how do I get this? Then I click on a notification and it takes me to the correct page. For that, we need to first have pages implemented. Because right now, a link like this does not include any data like on chat or chat ID or whatever. So we need to adjust our application to use dynamic routing on the paths to have this data being set. So let's tell Lovable following. Allow the URL/link to have a dynamic path with the chat room ID, so it can be accessed via a direct link. This will allow our application to have data that says, open this chat, open this chat, open this chat in the URL. And this URL can then be opened by clicking on the push notification so it goes to the correct page. Let's send this. First, we need to adjust our application architecture to support this. So now the prompt is allow the URL/link to have a dynamic path with the chat room ID or whatever ID that makes sense for you. So I can, not cam, I can. So it can be accessed via a direct link. Now it's going to adjust this. As you can see, conversation ID, pretty cool. It will update this, and then we can add this conversation ID as a custom data type to the API call. Now we can't set it as a URL because otherwise it will open it in the browser, but we need to set it as a custom data type URL so it opens it in the application. I'll show you how. So now that this is updated, let's publish this. And let's update this. And let's test this first in the web application, right? So now this will take a little bit, but we'll look into this. Okay, now we got this updated. And you can't do this with web push. This is prime native functionality here that we're doing. So now we are on this page, on the chat page. And when I click on the new chat page, you will see that now this link here has the ID, right? So let's copy this. Now let's say following. When sending the OneSignal push notifications via the REST API, that's the server call that we can do to OneSignal to send push notifications. When setting the OneSignal push notifications via the REST API, add a dynamic link so when the user clicks on the push notification, it opens the related chat room. And then I'm going to paste the link of this example chat room here. And now this is very important. Let's say very important. Very important. Important. Do not use, and this is very important, this is with Despia. Do not use the URL field in OneSignal. In OneSignal. Use the custom data field with the key URL. So it's data.url that contains the link. The Despia runtime needs it to be configured like this to work with app linking. It's very important. You need to add this. So let's go over the prompt again. Very critical. Okay. Now we said following. When sending the OneSignal push notifications with the REST API, that's how we do it on the backend, right? Add a dynamic link. So when the user clicks on the push notification, it opens the related chat room or whatever else you want to open, and then we put an example link in here, right? Very critical. Do not, it's very important, you need to set it up like this. Do not use the URL field in OneSignal. They come with a pre-built one. That field will open everything in the Safari browser, but you want this link to be opened in the app, not the Safari browser or the Chrome browser, right? Use the custom data field with the key URL. This is how you ensure that it opens it in the application, not on the web application. So it's data.url. That's just an example of how the dot notation would look, so the AI understands it. Sometimes it's a little bit dumb. That contains the link. The Despia runtime needs it to be configured like this to work with app linking. Let's send this to Lovable. Now it will implement this. This will take a little bit, and then we'll see if this works. So now Lovable finished the update, and I already published it, so let's test this out. So let's share my iPhone here, and let's take a look at this here. Let's scroll down here, and let's try sending a push notification from our application here. So let me just open the application, and then we'll try this out. Let's go on Get Started here. Let's go on New User 123, and let's do Hello. Let's send the notification here. And now, I'm going to share my screen. We will see the push notification, new message from one. That's our username here. And then we do hello. There you go. Now, if I click on this, here comes the magic. It will now open the correct chat page thanks to the deep linking URL that we added in the custom data field using the URL key. How cool is that? And it goes back and forth. I can now do hello and I can send it back, right? And you now see in real time this application updates here. So this is how you use push notifications, and they're pretty cool and pretty simple to set up. So, and now you also have this linking between the pages. So when I send a new notification, it opens the appropriate page. Let's do new, but send that. As you can see, we will then get the push notifications appearing in here. Let me just share this now. Oh, where did my phone go? Perfect. And I can click on here and it opens the page, as you can see, and loads the appropriate data. How cool is that? This is how you do it. It's that simple. If you have any questions, please go to the Despia editor and click on customer support. We're here to help you make sure that your implementation works 100%. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for watching this video. And I can't wait to see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.